Very excited to introduce everybody and welcome you all to our March Extra Expert Q&A with the Eric Grimm. Yay! Pew, 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 pew. I know, I should have some music queued up.
Just to give a quick explainer, as we kick off today, we're coming at you live from many cities, actually, but also we're in black and white during Brewers and Cup Chasers. So if there are people in and out, it's because our day is winding down. But hopefully it will get more peaceful as we move along in our conversation.
So beautiful. So excited to have you with us, Eric. Thank you for being in the world, also known as the Coffee Human Resource. Total HR generalist baddie, taught many in HR resources classes, or wow, human resources classes, and de-escalation trainings for coffee businesses that want to grow. And basically, it feeds so well into the theme of this month about great workplaces because it's so integral to a great workplace. Also, shout out to Eric, wonderful human, a part of the Level Up 2025 teaching and education and mentor cohort, teaching an HR 101 class for baristas. And very recently, Eric, if you want to add anything, feel free to, but you staffed an entire coffee shop, Canyon Coffee Shop, from Instagram stories. How cool is that? Pew, pew,
Oh,
pew,
yes.
pew. So without further ado, we're gonna get started with our Q&A. We would so love to hear from you, your stories, your learnings, your teachings, your tips. Give us what you got.
Anything you want.
All right. So one of our first questions we like to ask everyone is just, what's your story? How did you start off in coffee? How have the times changed since when that might have been? Tell us about you.
Oh, how the times have changed. That's a how old are you? How long have you been in coffee moments? So I've been in coffee now for 18 years, which means that I now use a prescription retinoid. Just so you can, just so you wonder, 18 years, really? But yeah, a bit of lore here. So in 2008, there was a place called Murky Coffee in DC. Yes, tretinoin, that's what's up. That's the one. 0.025%. But yeah, so Murky Coffee in DC was at the time recognized as maybe the best coffee shop in the United States because specialty was still getting its legs at that point. And there were a lot of really fantastic people there. They did really, really well in coffee competitions and became these towering figures in coffee. Katie Cargiulo, Tommy Gallagher, all sorts of wonderful people. And one of the people who worked there was my middle school best friend from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Ann Boatner. And Anne was coming up in coffee. She won, she took second place in a barista competition regional when she was 19 years old, and it was a competitive one too. It was back when they had regions like the Mid-Atlantic, and now they just do the whole thing in one day, but or 2 days. 2 days. They do the whole thing in 2 days. But yeah, so Ann Boatner worked at Murky. Murky closed. People kind of splintered all over the place. A lot of them went to New York. And Anne was a temp barista for a service called Temp Tamp. And she was pulling a shift at Every Man Espresso in the East Village of New York. And I would hang out with her there. And I met the folks there. I met the manager at the time, Amanda Ventresca. And at one point, she asked if I would jump back and work a cashier shift. And I just took it from there. And I didn't think I was going to stay in coffee. I didn't think I was smart enough to stay in coffee. I definitely don't have a very scientific mind. But I loved the people so much. I managed movie theaters before that. So there were, lots of opportunities to work with people, to manage people, to find different types of niches. I ended up doing mobile events for coffee companies. And then I sped right along to HR about almost 6 years ago. as a niche. But that's the thing I love about coffee. You can find a niche and just go for it.
Love that. And you're so right. There's so many different types of roles and niches and all just within coffee itself. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you got way more way more than you bargained for on that one. Deep lore.
Love it, really.
That's exactly what we want, is the contextual story. It's
Story
so important
time.
how we get here, you know?
Totally.
And coming from all those experiences, tying into what you do today, why is HR essential for creating a great workplace?
So the reason I got into HR was because when I worked at the smaller businesses, they had none. When I worked at the bigger businesses, they had HR, but it wasn't particularly good. It was very much serving the company and trying not to get them sued. HR is the missing piece. And I really realized that the more that I've worked with people, HR creates handbooks and policies that make things very clear, so there aren't as many guessing games with how to do things, with how to be successful. HR, when you're in a scaling business, also has the opportunity to be a conduit, to be the glue, to go up to managers and say, hey, how's it going with this person? Are you having some difficulties? Do you need help with that? Here's how we can coach them. Here's how we can do performance improvement plans. Here's how we can invest in them so that they can stay with the company, so we can reduce turnover, so that we can create a really positive culture. And a really positive culture doesn't have to mean pizza parties. In fact, I like a pizza party is a very little consequence to me. I love it when they buy lunch, but I have never planned a pizza party as an HR person. What I have done is strategized on labor, strategized on professional development for baristas, and that is what I would prefer to put my focus on, and that I think makes a great workplace.
That is so incredible. Okay. Shout out to focusing on things beyond a pizza party.
And before we move on, can I ask a clarifying question?
Mhm.
When you talk about when you're strategizing for the workplace in lieu of pizza party, which we agree, pizza
Yeah.
is delicious and it's not HR.
Mhm.
Give us like a specific example of like what moves the needle in those strategies. Like what are the things that are like highest top of funnel, really impactful things to strategize on in those sessions that you do?
Great question. So I'll give an actual example of what I'm working on with my biggest client right now. So very purely in startup mode, and it is a roastery. So what we have to do is every quarter, at the very least, we have to reevaluate everybody's job description and be like, are they doing this? Are they good at doing this? Do we need to take 10% of what one person is doing and give it to another person who might need some professional development? Or do I need to take 20% from this person, 30% from this person, 10% from this person? I can do math, 20% from this person, and put it into a person who does not yet exist in the organization. Hire a new person. So that is this opportunity to find what people's strengths are, and try to encourage those as much as possible. See if we can narrow their focus to really focus on some of those on those major strengths, and ultimately make them happier, give them a raise. Or is someone not doing something well, not because they're not good at it, but because it's just not really their zone of genius, in which case maybe this person can do it better. Or maybe we need to create an entirely new role just to get that taken care of.
That is so beautiful because it sounds like it distills and creates this like clarity both for like all the individuals involved in the workplace and like supports kind of the path of the business itself, like maybe where they're trying to head as they keep going. And I like
Mhm.
how beautifully you put that all together.
Thank you.
So maybe a partial question to add to this question would also be just hearing some things from you about like what makes a great workplace, you know?
Mhm.
But what are some of those easy wins that really create and define a workplace to you as a truly great workplace?
hmm Here's the easiest win: a good onboarding process. 80% of workers go through an onboarding process that they would describe as poor. It happens so much. It does not matter what the industry is. It doesn't matter if it's coffee, if it's anything else. Their onboarding process stinks. So putting in some effort on the front end in order to make the onboarding process good, and that involves welcoming somebody, that involves giving very clear expectations, perhaps a 30, 60, 90, so that they know how they're going to be successful in this role and at what point they should be self-sufficient, making sure that their training is sketched out, making sure that someone owns their training. I wrote a piece about this for Fresh Cup, and I'll make sure to link to it. And I know it's not show notes, but it's your equivalent of what you send afterwards. But I gave free advice on how to make a positive onboarding experience. And one of the scenarios that I gave that seems to be a bit of a universal for a lot of people is you show up on your first day, you say, "Hey, it's my first day," and somebody looks at you like, "Who are you? I've never heard of you before in my life." They hired somebody else, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, that person who you just talked to, they're going to train you." And that person's like, "I just started last week. How am I supposed to train you?" So having a process sketched out, having people own specific parts of it, and it doesn't cost any money. It really is just about putting some time towards strategizing, towards, putting processes in place, and then checking off boxes.
Can I ask kind of the opposite question as well of
Mm.
what is the biggest, scariest HR monster that people avoid and that really makes it like a huge difference, even if it is an effort? And I think about this coming from a QC lens of QC doesn't make you money on paper, but it
Mhm.
trust builds with your customers over time, right? And it saves you money over time and like grows professional development, all these other things. I'm not such an advocate for QC, but it's a hard sell on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. What is like the HR equivalent of that?
Probably difficult conversations, just being open to difficult conversations, and like having that be part of your investment in people. Because what happens most often is you might feel like you are stuck with a particular person who is, maybe not pulling your weight, who doesn't necessarily have the best attitude. And because you're afraid of confrontation and difficult conversations, you kick the can down the road, you kick the can down the road, you kick the can down the road. And then suddenly, maybe that person has quit, or maybe multiple people who work with them have quit because they don't necessarily want to work with that person. And that costs money. Turnover costs money. Training people costs money. If we're talking about coffee shops, if you have a significant staff turnover, it doesn't mean your business is over, but your regulars notice that. Your patrons notice that. They notice that it takes that much longer. They notice that their drink, which was, made to near perfection for weeks and weeks and weeks, suddenly tastes a little off, and you might lose customers. And you might have so much competition that you can then lose customers permanently to places that have it a little bit more together. So I think that people are generally non-confrontational. I think that it's tough to think about investing in somebody from having difficult conversations, and also, and we should talk about this more, performance improvement plans. I am a huge advocate of performance improvement plans. I have recently done about four of them since October, and three of them smashing successes. The fourth, working on it.
I mean, 75%, that like these get degrees, babe. That's great. Those are really good, like odds ratios. It's a great ratio of success.
That's really good sports.
I really love that. And I know you started with one of the big wins, but were there any other ones that you wanted to talk about before moving forward?
Oh, easy, more wins, or easy wins, like easy to, validating.
Onboarding. Oh yeah,
I think that and validating not just people who might be struggling, but this has actually come up recently with a client. Validating people who are doing well, because sometimes we can get so caught up in having so many people, and you're like, Shelly is doing great. I can leave Shelly alone. Don't leave Shelly alone. Tell Shelly she's doing great. Make sure Shelly knows that she's doing great, and also check in to see if Shelly is in fact doing well mentally with everything. Because some people will just make it happen, and then suddenly they're like, "Oh my God, I've been doing this for so long, and and I'm like siloed. Nobody's paying attention to me, and I feel isolated, and I can't be here anymore." So yeah, that I think, and a practical thing that you can do in that regard is even just creating a Google Sheet with your employees and breaking it down to, when was the last time that that I talked to Shelly? When was the last time that I encouraged Shelly? When was the last time Shelly got a raise? When was the last time that Shelly got any sort of professional development? Actually keeping track of employees that way. A lot of HR information systems will have things that you can, employee profiles that you can keep all of that in, and you can keep notes on people. But even if you don't have one of those, even if you're just using Square, or something like that for your payroll, you can just have a Google Sheet and just keep track of people and try to have a temperature check, a pulse check.
that sounds beautiful. Yeah, yeah. And that brought up another question, because I don't want to make any assumptions here, but who are normally the folks who are doing these types of things, like providing the onboarding process and managing and keeping track of all of how everybody's
Yeah.
doing? Mhm.
Yes, yes. Because like, let's scale it back a little bit, because I'm very fortunate in that, right now I have one big client who I handle all of their HR, and they got to the point where they needed somebody to be able to do that on a fractional basis. I only do 25 hours a week of HR because that's all that's needed at this particular point in the company. But before me, there's no one. So it's usually a business owner. It might be a finance person. That's a really, really common one, is that they'll hire a finance person, and because that person deals with the actual money that goes into labor, suddenly they become the HR person. It almost always sucks when that happens, because they're not qualified to be able to have difficult conversations, to be able to take that type of feedback and then create culture out of it. But for the smallest ones, for just like, single coffee shop operations, it's probably going to fall to the owner, and they might punt it to the manager as well. And that is, that's tough stuff. Ultimately, as the owner, the buck stops with you. And you have to really set the tone. You really have to, do your part to create a good experience. And I think that I just want to encourage these folks to do some research, to like really, like, I don't know how much we should encourage AI usage here, but it's, if you already use some sort of, AI chatbot or something like that, have a conversation with the AI chatbot about things that you can do to, like, to help people out, like easy wins.
Thank you for that added context. I think it's so helpful to be thinking about that in the context of our conversation today. And yes, like especially in the world of working with people, got what delicate.
Delicate's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
All right. So, with that in mind, what are some things that some business owners are doing right or doing really well, and maybe more often, what are they getting wrong?
So with most of the folks that I work with, the things that they're doing right are like they're really trying to connect with their staff as much as possible. They're really showing their best intentions in creating, creating wonderful workplaces, and they're really trying to prioritize their staffs as well. Not at the expense of their own lives. And more and more, a trend that I'm really liking seeing in business owners. And I'm also going to give big props to Erica Escalante for this, because I think that she really has blazed the trail. She's really trailblazed. She's really trailblazed with this um transparency as far as business is concerned, teaching baristas what business is really like, what a P&L is, how what labor percentage is, how that actually happens. And this also came up with a friend recently who was working for a decent sized coffee company on the East Coast. And at one point, all the employees came up and they said, "Hey, we need a raise or we're walking out. This is the raise that we want." And the managers and ownership, they called a meeting the next week and they said, "All right, let's look at the financials. Here's what all of this is, as transparent as possible. Here are our sales, here are our expenses, here's our labor. Let's run this through where we give you all the raise that you're asking. Here's how long until we're out of business." And I think that now that we have this generation of ownership that are not keeping things so close to the chest and are being a lot more upfront with what all of that is, it actually takes a lot of the anxiety out of it for hourly coffee workers who are coming up, who might be struggling, who might be trying to find their way, and who think, oh, they own a business. They're clearly wealthy, right? Like, trust me, I'm a business owner myself, have been for about 5 years at this point, and I, cash, I don't know her so much. Credit, I do know well. But when it comes down to it, for the most part, business owners are not rolling in it, especially the business owners that you really see all the time. Like it is their pursuit. It is what they are really passionate about. Did you already ask the second part, or should I go on to it?
Go for it. Yeah.
What they're getting wrong.
Mhm.
What they're getting wrong, definitely, again, back to not being able to have difficult conversations, for sure. I think that's a big one. I think what they're doing wrong, and what maybe most people are doing wrong, is not having empathy at the forefront.
Mm.
And not really being very curious about why things aren't going well with somebody, because there are so many factors that can go into, poor work performance, or difficulty getting along with people. It can be a difficult home life. A big one that I'm, thinking a lot about, and, I'm going to be writing about soon, is neurodivergences. Like, this is a really neurodivergent workforce, which means that it is not one size fits all. We actually do have to modulate for different types of folks in order to accommodate them. And when we do that successfully, we actually unlock incredible things in these folks. And I've seen this too. I've seen this recently, where it's like, oh, let's figure this out. Let's work on communication across the board. Let's see where we can meet some middle ground. And then somebody who came into work miserable most days smiles most days now. And that's like biggest win.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. That is, I think, really kind of positive highlight for transparency and kind of shedding that more openness and everybody involved at the business. And it sounds like, there's room to grow on how we show up with those challenging or conversations that are, challenging to have. And love that extra piece about being attentive to like individual needs as well.
And I think a little bit of a sum of all of that is as well, if you don't feel immediately well equipped to deal with those particular situations, you have the community who can provide feedback on it. So a few months ago, I on Instagram, and this was close stories tea right here. But Trish Rothgeb, the mother of the third wave, brought a particular question about a tricky employee scenario that involved performance, that involved professional development, and was a little bit at a loss, and then opened it up to a tight part of this community in order to try and figure this out confidentially, very respectfully. And it invited a really cool conversation. She shared a lot of what she received, and it was a great dialogue, and I think that is super important, is to do something, do so confidentially and respectfully, but open it up. Don't try and just solve those problems on your own if you don't have an immediate read on it, and if you don't have tried and true methods in order to move through those scenarios. Take in advice. You can take in as much advice as you want. You can use 10% of it, but 10% of it might be the difference.
That's
Yeah, I think
amazing.
something I think about in operations a lot is coffee. We have such like an interesting industry that it almost feels like our problems are unique or uniquely fucked up or like hard, but like every problem is the same. And it's just like there's other industries have solved them over and over, or even other roasteries or things like that. Are there industries or resources outside of coffee that you look to or would point people to when they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having this situation, you wouldn't believe, it's so messy, and you're like, girl, that's Tuesday, right? Like, and like, because I think that it humanizes it and it makes people feel like in solidarity, but sometimes you don't know where to look, or you might not have connection to community to ask, or feel shame or something asking folks. So where might you look outside of your circles if you don't have Trisha's amazing close friends network?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I think the immediate thing that jumps to mind is, well, for one, you're creating that here on Patreon, by having these types of professional resources and having them be accessible to people, which is fantastic. I think that we just got out of Coffee Fest New York as well. I think that there were also plenty of opportunities to try and get in there on a budget. Y'all certainly offered scholarships, which was really fantastic. And it's fun. You said outside of the coffee industry as well, and I do try to take in sources outside of the coffee industry just to see if there are applicable things. But look, part of the reason I said the coffee human resource was because some issues are like fairly unique to this industry. The communal way that coffee people are, if you look at other industries, it's very, very rare. I mean, maybe acting, because they like, especially if you're in a particular community and you see the same type of people all the time, but they don't have HR. They're contract workers. They're not working full-time jobs like that, and so you're having to marry these actually like labor laws that we have to follow with a community that has very specific needs. Part of my impetus for getting into HR was because I worked for a bigger coffee company who had a horrible HR person. She came from fashion retail, and she was like, I got this, and this result. My KPIs were X, Y, and Z. And then she came in, and it's like, well, what do you do with a very engaged, and very communal and very everybody talks to everybody. And if one person's pissed, they're going to let someone else know they're pissed. And like, if they let a particular person know they're pissed, well, that person's going to be righteous about their friend having a bad experience. And then suddenly, here is your employer brand that is getting dragged through the mud, right? So
Yeah.
I do think it is actually, I think it's unique. And I think this also gets a little bit to when I hear people say, oh, I hate the coffee industry, or, oh, I like the coffee industry is trash. I need to get it out of it as soon as possible. Almost everybody I have seen who has done that, um, they certainly have not found another industry that was, that was less exploitative, that was, better to work with, that had better standards or anything like that across the board. What you find out is that all industry is exploitative and we live in capitalism. That's just the cold and hard truth about it. But the coffee industry has these little communal pockets who try to provide free resources, and mutual aid, all sorts of things. Level Up is definitely an example of that. Raise the Bar. Glitter Cat was when I did that. There is a strong desire to come together and to pool resources in order to make it easier for folks than it was on us.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate your perspective and like saying you're right. And I think that I did the trope of people are not operations. Like it is not human capital. And I think about like I know I have a systems brain and I know I'm thinking about like that, and I really appreciate the reframe of that. So I just wanted to say thank you because as usual, you're right.
Well, and like let's talk about that too. Like people aren't human capital. Is that the phrase you used?
Yeah, I think that in my time in tech, I would hear those words and I'm like, that's fucking
Mm.
right. Like
Hmm.
the human capital. And I'm like, they would talk about it as an asset, right? Or like
Yes.
something to cut, or it's just like it
Hmm.
made it feel like those Greek illustrations of all the humans under the columns being ground. That's how I envision human capital.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it's something to avoid, but I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater on that. So I don't believe in human capital in that way. But also, I'm not all the way on the other end over here saying I'm going to like no holds barred invest in every single person that works for this business. At some point, if a person is not putting in anything when I'm trying to give opportunities and when I'm trying to give grace and when I'm trying to show empathy, like there does come a limit. And there is then a kind of, I don't want to say it's a scary thing, but a more clinical thing where I'm like, okay, this person makes X amount of money. What's the value that we're getting as a result from that? Does that match up? And it might not match up, in which case then it's making a decision, it's making a tough decision about demotion or termination. And that's not something that I'm afraid of, because the question is, how do you do it compassionately, and how do you balance needs of the business with somebody who's not doing particularly well? And is somebody continuing to do poorly because they're just stuck in this place where they're getting given chances over and over and over again, but they can't get their head in the game? In which case, often the compassionate thing to do is to let them go and to say, find somewhere that fits you better, and that's
I
okay.
totally agree. And I think what you described to me is like the opposite of like the idea of human capital. I
Mm,
kind of view it as like when tech companies like overhire and then do mass layoffs, and then they overhire, and
yes.
it's like everything is a number in a spreadsheet. And what you just described was very like singular human compassionate approach to looking at the work that we do when we live under capitalism, not
Hmm.
viewing just like that everything that's contributed to this section of our P&L is human capital. And I think that
Yes.
I really appreciate the nuance that you brought to that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to what I was talking about earlier when I'm taking percentages of different people in order to create another person, when we're talking about scaling responsibly, because, for me, the only time I need to hire a bunch of people at once is when we have a brand new cafe. You know, when we're talking about roastery operations, that's a one at a time kind of situation. I got to be real careful about it. I have to find somebody, if they're coming into an entry level position, who has a really clearly defined job and who I think they're going to stick with this. They're going to build. We're going to give them raises for tenure. We're also going to see what opportunities we have for them down the line. Like, actually, my nightmare scenario is influx of capital. Let's hire the director of sustainability, the like director of stuff, the 20 people, so that suddenly, like the actual work goes down quite a bit, and then there's a downturn, or the money runs out, or somebody's mismanaging it, and then suddenly you're having to have not like I'm not afraid of difficult conversations, but the we screwed this up conversation, and like now you're all let go. Terrible. I don't want to work. I don't want to work for those types of businesses.
And
I think that would
80% of
not be a great workplace.
Yes. Okay, that was great. Thank you.
Truly. Okay. Oh, great question. In the context of baristas, could you speak a little bit to the types of responsibilities that baristas have in contributing to creating, maintaining a great workplace?
Totally. So what jumps to mind with this is, in my whole process, 18 years and now about 6 years in the human resources sphere orbit. Um, the way that I like to put it is that I have advocacy for hourly coffee workers and a lot of empathy for business owners, especially having been one myself. And I have to strike that balance. Now, within that advocacy, again, it's like I'm not trying to give you everything in the world. I am trying to make it so that you can shine, so that you can have reasonable expectations of what your job is. But it's an agreement. And the agreement is, please come in, enthusiastic. If you're not enthusiastic, then, we can have a conversation about it, and that's fine. You're going to go through levels of all of that, but don't come in with a stank attitude. And also, our agreement for having empathy for you and for having curiosity if things aren't going well, I want you to have that in the other direction. If things aren't going well, I want you to have some curiosity about it, and I want you to ask questions about it. You can complain until the cows come home, and that's your right. It's actually your lawful right to be able to complain about your workplace. But what if you actually asked questions about it? And what if you gave some suggestions, or just gave your observations in a respectful way, in a non-antagonizing way? I'm not saying that there are a ton of people out there antagonizing business owners or anything like that, but I would love to see more curiosity from baristas in the workplace, and moving from a place of empathy. And ultimately, in some situations, they're going to be exploited. They are going to be made promises that weren't held up. I get that. And in which case, great, move on, and go with dignity to a place that's going to appreciate you a lot more. But come in with the best intentions, and be kind to your coworkers, and be kind to your vendors, and please be kind to your customers. I I'm not going to name names, but a particular barista influencer recently posted something about what they owed customers and how little it was, and how much they wanted to keep a significant barrier from customers. And I think I kind of knew what they were talking about, but it just seemed like it was encouraging shitty customer service. And, I came up in New York in the aughts when you could be mean to customers and it was fine because there weren't a lot of really great coffee shops. And so, we were all like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. I like was maybe 25% that. For the most part, I was very kind. But we were, kind of encouraged to like stick to our guns and like, no, you can't have espresso to go. And you're a dumbass if you want that. It's like, and like that, it didn't work. It didn't work because then suddenly a bunch of other coffee shops opened and people were nice. And it was like, I think I don't want abuse with my coffee.
This sounds like something that is a conversation that could happen in an onboarding process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But no, that curiosity piece sounds really, really important. I have a follow-up question on that, which is around like, do you like if you can speak to the common like ways or suggestions to how it sounds like it's potentially speaking to managers and owners? Is it just bringing it up, or
Mhm.
wait till a certain time, or
So that's a great question on like what is the right timing of it. Timing's probably not a rush, but hey, do you have maybe 5 minutes for a conversation with me? I've noticed this. Is there a way that this could change, or is there something that we need to be doing in order to, make this change? I've also noticed that a bunch of us feel this way and not this is kind of where the I first language comes in. I first isn't successful 100% of the time. There are differing schools of thought on it, but it can be a great way to start a conversation saying, I've noticed something, as opposed to you're doing something. Because when you say you're doing something, and this is a little bit from de-escalation, you're encouraging defensiveness because everybody has defensiveness hardwired in them. And very few people have like thick enough skin to be able to take that and not feel bad about themselves and just like derail a conversation from there. So I think, yeah, like that's really, I think, the best way of trying to move into those conversations and having a dialogue, as opposed to like, let's talk shit behind their backs and talk about how much we hate it and breed resentment in ourselves and others. It's just like it doesn't go anywhere. And ultimately, I think that it breeds a sense of distrust that goes beyond just that particular workplace, because then you just expect that. And if you see something similar, it ends up triggering you. You end up feeling like, oh, this is like reflective of this entire industry. And it's like, maybe if we ask some questions, we might find some willingness to solve some issues.
That is
That's
a beautiful example. Thank you.
I come from a lineage of a PhD therapist mom, and so there's a lot of data that's just been kind of put at me my whole life, and that's all. Everything you said is like the most data-driven way to like do conflict. It's always use I language, lead with curiosity, and
Hmm.
then like even just like the take your shit talking outside of these walls. Like don't put that in here. Like take it like
Hmm.
away, and then like not escalating in those moments. And I really appreciate that perspective. Do you think that at what point is it not the barista's responsibility to maintain a great workplace and environment? Like where is that threshold?
Once they have come with integrity, with concerns, and they're brushed under the table. They're brushed off. They're given a I can't deal with that. At that point, it's like, okay, I tried my best. I have to go ahead and go elsewhere with this. And I at that point, I think when you have made the decision to, be brave and to come with integrity to a business owner or a manager and say, hey, I think that this is an issue, you're defining your values. Once you define your values, you have the opportunity, if it doesn't work out, to find another business that does have your values, that is value aligned with you. And this a little bit gets back to the reel that I posted the other day about applying for jobs. In that, which is on the Coffee Human Resource on Instagram, I talked about how much I actually love to receive cover letters. And I think a great cover letter in this situation is going to say, hey, I know that these are your values from, having observed you, or maybe your values are written out on your website, or maybe I know people who work for you, and so I know your values. They align with my values. I want to work for this company because we have that same mindset. We have a similar mindset, and I think that we would work well together. And then that might invite a conversation about like, okay, maybe you didn't stay at this place very long. What happened? And it was a values thing. It was, I really tried to make the best out of a situation and I couldn't, but then came out of it with my integrity intact.
Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, a slightly different question, but very related. Are there
Super
certain
really.
things that baristas focus on too much, and where should they focus their attention on instead?
um, they're focusing on swans too much. And most of their swans look terrible. I'm like, what is that? What is that weird bird with a broken neck? Can you focus on customer service? Can you be nice to people? Can you be nice to your coworkers?
I'm picking up on a recurring theme of empathy and curiosity
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Yeah, that's the long and short.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Heard. Okay. Now, a beefier question. What do you say to business owners who think they can't afford to implement the strategies that larger companies use to create a great work culture?
You can for free. There's so many resources. There's a whole ass internet out there. It's really just a matter of finding different, like, even when we're talking about professional development, it's like, oh, I can't afford to send them to a training. Well, you know what? There are a lot of online resources. You also have a community. Ask favors. The worst thing that anybody can say is, no, I can't help you out with that. The best thing that somebody can say is, oh, you have somebody who's interested in this, and this might help your business, and this might help this person come up in the world. You know what? I'll give some of my time to you. I'll answer some questions. Or maybe I know somebody who can, invest some time in you. Or maybe I know a program who does this for free and you qualify for it. So again, be curious, right? I can't afford to do this. Well, is that 100% true? Can you really not afford to do this? Can you really not afford to look up something and find it for free or for cheap? Even like, good example of this. I was a little bit at a loss trying to get somebody technical training, like espresso machine training. And I was looking around, and there were a lot of really, really expensive options for trying to get somebody technical training, and I didn't even know if it was if they would really take to it. I didn't, it was a little bit of a gamble. And then suddenly I'm talking to my friend. I'm talking to Julie Hausch, who is a, coffee legend. And Julie's like, oh, there's this thing happening at World of Coffee. It's $220. It's a tech primer. I'm like, oh, I had no clue, right? And she's like, oh yeah, it was on this person's Instagram. So suddenly it's like, okay, what I thought might be a thousands of dollars investment, I can start off with a $220 investment for somebody, or even if I don't have $220, oh yes, yes, Julie's site, When is Coffee, very, very important for figuring out all the events, particularly at things like World of Coffee, the artist formerly known as Expo. Um, but like, all of this is to say, you have so many different options. You have so many different options for scholarship. You even have so many different options for raising money. You can appeal to so many different people. If anybody gets offended by you asking a favor from them, then I wouldn't work with them, to be totally honest. Like, even if I have to say, if somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, Eric, I have $0 and I need a handbook and policies," I am most likely going to say, I can't do that because it is a significant amount of time, and I cannot take the often 10 to 15 hours that it does to come up with a suite of projects, of policies and handbooks for $0. That said, here's where I think that you can find some options. Fresh Cup has all of these incredible resources that are good primers for people to just be able to get started. There are a lot of articles that you can read. There's a lot of stuff that you can do on your own, and I'm happy to point you in that direction.
That's amazing. And we even spoke and you talked about other examples where the community, uniquely coffee, does often show up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. You spoke to this a little bit, but come back to this topic if you have any other highlights. But speaking kind of in inspiration from a recent video you shared about resumes and hiring, are there
Mhm.
any important things that you would want to call out for baristas to, like, especially include or highlight when they are applying to a new workplace?
Yeah, so let's actually get back to what you were talking about at the very beginning. Recently hired a whole coffee shop off of Instagram stories. And part of that is a real testament to the brand of the company. They have really built something incredible. So incredible that it is a Los Angeles brand that was opening up in New York, and so many people had heard of it. So many people really, really wanted to work for that company. So when you're interested in working for like finding your next opportunity, do follow those companies, because I'm encouraging everybody to hire off of Instagram stories right now. And the reason is because there's already buy-in on the brand. There's already somebody who's excited, who's enthusiastic about the brand. They want to work for this company. They don't just want a barista position. So if you have your like gold star companies that are, close to where you are, then follow them and be inquisitive, be curious. Maybe even, I love getting emails from people saying, "Hey, are there any positions open?" Even if there aren't, it's like, all right, you're curious about the brand, you're excited about the brand. When there is a position, then I've got my label in my Gmail, and I can, go and be like, oh, this person asked about this at this time. So definitely do that. Like I said in my reel, please just give the relevant experience. I don't want to see a 3-page resume that goes back to when you babysat.
Mm, great advice. So
Yeah.
being kind of proactive and looking out for the opportunities, reaching out if you are very interested in working with them, and kind of being okay. I know we're coming to our last few minutes here, so I do want to just kind of leave it open. The last part is about like any additional tales or anecdotes, but I see we have a question in the chat here.
Mhm.
Um, So if we could start with that question, that'd be amazing. Do you have any tips on how to get someone excited when they are showing up for a paycheck?
This is a great question. It's an excellent question. So if you're noticing that they're really just in it showing up for a paycheck, get to know them a little bit better. Find some time on the clock for sure, to have about 15 to 20 minutes with them and say, hey, what are you up to outside of this coffee shop? Is coffee a pit stop for you, or is coffee potentially someplace where you can see yourself being successful? Even if they think that it might be a pit stop for them, and then you find out, oh, what I'm really interested in is social media marketing, and it's like, well, wow, boy howdy, have I have I got news for you? We all need it. maybe I maybe I can do some labor strategy and figure out what I can potentially invest in you to be able to do a little bit of that and to be a little bit more connected. Try and find out the reason that they don't feel particularly connected, and really pry into that. If it turns out it's like, look, this is just a pit stop, this is, like, I am just here because I need a paycheck, at the very base level, then it's a smile. It's, trying to keep things as comfortable as possible, and also, being on alert a little bit, because if somebody is really just in it for the paycheck and then their attitude sours over and over again in spite of your best attempts, then you do need to consider if it's time to move on.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
and Debbie, if you have any other questions. Oh, that said, it is 3, isn't it? I mean, I'm good to stay.
Yeah,
You've
Debbie, if you
answered so many already. I have all my notes on the side. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here.
You need to get like gold star stickers and just give them all to Debbie because she shows up.
Yes.
I get the show up award.
Yes. Oh,
Are
perfect
gold stars
attendance.
better than pizza parties?
Oh, 100%.
Well, Eric,
Yeah.
to wrap things up, we're always curious. Is there anything that we can do to shout out about you, what you've got going on currently or upcoming? Obviously, we know to find you at the Human Coffee Resource.
The coffee human resource.
The
I mean,
Coffee
the
Human
human coffee
Resource.
resource sounds great too, but you can
Excuse me.
also find me at Eric J. Grimm. I'm constantly toggling between a personal and professional identity on there, and making sure things are a little bit messy, or at least beautifully photographed by one Rachel Apple. I think, what current upcoming projects. Look, I'm very excited about Level Up Part 2. I'm really, really looking forward to that. I am also, and I'll be a little bit vague about this, working with a friend on something that is, I think, going to expand both of our reaches to be able to help out a lot of different businesses and connect with them in a meaningful way. I am an HR evangelist. That's how I like to refer to myself. Sometimes I get pushback on that because people have religious trauma, and I'm a rare homosexual that doesn't. But I'm on a mission to get people to take it seriously in coffee and to invest some money up front to then not lose money on turnover, on on fines, on all sorts of things that you just that you just don't think about. I'm here to make sure that people know that HR is preventative maintenance. So stay tuned.
Stay
Thank
pesky.
you. We love that.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Ivana. Thank you, world. I feel grateful
Thanks,
for
all.
y'all. Okay. Have a good afternoon and evening, everybody.